Hello, my name is Jim Gurman, and welcome to today's episode of
Kilimanjaro.
Today we'll take a look at Dewalt's DW715 Compound Miter saw. Now this saw is one step up from their base model. The base model uses a 10-inch blade, this has a 12-inch blade, and it only tilts in one direction as opposed to some of the fancier saws which will tilt in both directions. The higher end saws will also slide forward and backward to give you extra cut capacity. That being said, this has the cut capacity to cut a 4x4 in one shot or a 2x8 without having to flip it over. Let's start by taking a look at the construction of the saw. It's mostly made up of cast aluminum with all the either mating surfaces or working surfaces like the fence and top of the table here that have been machined very nicely to keep them flat and level. Being made of aluminum, the saw is nice and lightweight and easy to move around. However, it still retains the rigidity to give you an excellent cut quality. Now, talking about moving it around, the saw has a nice feature where there's a pin back here that you can push in and locks the saw down in place. And there's a nice handle here which is nice and in the center of gravity, which allows you to pick it up with one hand and carry it around. It comes with one support over here that can easily be moved from one side of the table to the other to help support your workpiece. However, if you want more support than that, you can either buy another one of these, or you can buy Dewalt's optional stand, or you can make your own stand. Getting into the operation of the saw, when you pull the pin in the back, you'll notice that the saw slowly rises up. It doesn't slam up, which is great if you accidentally take your hand off while your face is in the way. It's not going to smash you in the face. Now you'll notice down below there's an angle gauge. By pulling up on this lever right here, it'll slide all around. Very easy to move, it's very nice. And you'll notice that the gauge is marked in 5-degree increments with lines not only at every individual angle, but also at a couple more commonly used ones like 31.62 and 22.5. In addition, if you let the lever go, it'll lock into place at 0 degrees, 15 degrees, or some of those other more commonly used angles. If you want to lock it somewhere where there isn't an indent, you just simply push down on that handle and it locks it in place. Nice and sturdy, it's not going to go anywhere. One thing to note is that this angle gauge is adjustable, so if you find that it's a little bit off, you can always move it so that it cuts perfectly accurate miters. However, I found that from the factory, mine was spot on. To tilt the saw, there's a large knob back here. If you undo that, then the saw can tilt freely to 45 degrees, where there's a hard stop, and if you go back to 0 degrees, there's another hard stop there. Both of those stops can be adjusted so that they're right on, and you can also over tilt it by about 5 degrees or negative 5 degrees in either direction as well. The fence that your workpiece rests upon is this piece of aluminum here that's been machined to be nice and straight, and is all one piece. This lower piece here and this piece over here are connected by this large hoop of aluminum. Now what that means is that this fence is always going to be perfectly coplanar, so that when you put a workpiece on, it's not going to try and rock between the two pieces. However, that being said, this upper portion here does slide back and forth, which you need to do if you're going to tilt the saw. You need to slide it out of the way and slide it back in. And this is one of my few complaints about the saw. While if everything's nice and clean, when you tighten it up, this face here is perfectly aligned with this face down here. However, if you've got any sawdust in between there, this face here can get slightly out of plane with the face down here, and then when you grab a piece of wood, it can rock between the two faces some. It's not really a big deal, but it's something that you have to be a little bit careful with. To change the blade on the saw, you use the included wrench, which has a Torx bit on one end and a socket on the other. There's a nice space back here to store it so you don't ever lose it. You simply pull back the guard, you undo this screw right here. You don't have to take it out all the way, there's just a little clip that it needs to be able to clear. So a couple turns will do that. Once that's done, you push this up out of the way. Another turn there. Push that out of the way. Then you get the socket on the nut here and take the blade off. Now the only caveat on that is it's a left-hand thread, but it's nicely marked to tell you that, so it should never be an issue. Before we go ahead and make some test cuts, I do want to mention the only downfall of the saw, and that's the dust collection. It has a little port back here that you could hook a vacuum up. It comes with a little bag that hangs off there. Honestly, it doesn't do a whole lot. It does catch some of the chips, but it still makes a giant mess. Now at this price point, that's kind of to be expected. Miter saws in general are very difficult to collect dust from, so if you're using this outside, not going to be a big deal. If you're using it inside, you're going to have to do a lot of cleanup after you use the saw. I've got my safety glasses on and plugged the miter saw in, so now I'm going to set the saw to 0 degrees and make a test cut to show you how well it works. So this is just a hunk of 4x4, it's just a piece of scrap, so I'm just going to take a quick cut to show you that it can clear that and how well it cuts. Now this is using the blade that the saw came with, which is a 32 general purpose blade. Dewalt makes a bunch of other blades that you can use. However, a bunch of other companies also make blades. So if you're not happy with the cut quality from this blade, lots of other choices to use. saw easily makes that cut. It clears the 4x4 without any issues. It has a 15 amp motor, so it didn't have any problems bogging down as it was making the cut. The 15 amp motor is as big a motor as you can put on a regular household circuit, so it's pretty much the standard for most miter saws. To conclude, I really like this saw. It's very well engineered and very well made. All the parts that are supposed to move very nicely. All the parts that aren't supposed to move don't move. All the parts that are supposed to be flat are nice and flat, and all the parts that are straight are nice and straight. There's a lot of little features that they thought through, such as the angle gauge with all its positive stops and the fact that you can adjust it. There's also lots of little holes where you can bolt it down if you need to. It comes with an extension arm for supporting your workpieces. And best of all, it's only about $240. I think this is an excellent value, and I'd highly recommend it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about the saw or things that you think I missed, let me know in the comments below.